In this day and age when you're questioning what's real and what isn't, the best way to find out if someone's telling you the truth is to look them in the eye.
Welcome to a new kind of Sunday show. Real human interactions and insight on your week ahead.
No panels, no Zoom, nobody in a box ever.
This is Sunday Night.
With me, Chuck Todd. Good evening and welcome to another edition of Sunday Nights with Chuck Todd. It's been quite the last couple of weeks in the Trump era, and for the first time, we're seeing a significant portion of his base growing impatient and disillusioned, specifically over a broken promise, the release of everything the government knows about Jeffrey Epstein and his network. This controversy has escalated enough to effectively shut down the House of Representatives for the rest of the summer, as Speaker Johnson chose to send the House home early for the recess in order to avoid an uncomfortable Epstein vote. And it looks like this story will continue to hover over the Republican Party and the president well into September. And while we're used to seeing this president weather controversies quickly, this one seems to be sticking around, and it could signal the beginning of a sustained dip in his approval ratings and possibly trigger the start of the lame duck period of his second term. Because while voters are conditioned to broken promises from politicians, there are always some promises voters take more seriously than others. George H.W. Bush famously paid a steep price for breaking his famous "read my lips, no new taxes" pledge. And Barack Obama and the Democrats struggled to get out from under his famous broken promise on health care. If you like your plan, you can keep it. It appears this promise by Trump of releasing everything about Epstein and his network is having a similar political impact on him as those other famous broken promises had in the past. Democrats are currently reveling in the trouble this Epstein story is causing Trump, but is it a cure for all that ails the party? To discuss this and more about the future of the Democratic Party, I'll speak with New York Congressman Ritchie Torres, who is never shy about sharing his perspective about the direction of the party. And following that, I'm going to speak with Politico's White House Bureau Chief and host of The Conversation, Dasha Burns. She's very plugged into this Trump administration, and she's got some interesting takes on how the White House is handling this Epstein communications crisis. So we're happy to be back here at the Dubliner. Let's get started. Well, joining me now, Richie Torres, Democrat from the Bronx. That isn't AOC's part of the Bronx, right?
I represent about half the Bronx.
Yeah.
And so I split the West Bronx with Adrian Espaillat, I split the South Bronx with AOC, and I split the Northeast Bronx with George Latimer.
There is a stat that stunned all of us.
Yeah.
The poorest district in the country? It's certainly a distressed district.
It's one of the lowest income congressional districts, but it's also a tale of two cities.
Okay.
Because I represent the South Bronx, which is one of the poorest geographic areas in the country. Mm-hmm. Ground zero for racially concentrated poverty, scenes of arson and abandonment from the 1970s. But I also represent Horace Mann, which is one of the most elite private colleges. So
right.
It's as diverse a district as one could imagine.
In some ways, very healthy, considering we're dealing with issues like income inequality and concerns like that. You deal with this with your own constituents.
And demographically, I mean, I have Arthur Abbey, Little Italy. I have Little Yemen. I have Little Ireland. Woodlawn is a historically Irish community. I have a vibrant, modern Orthodox Jewish community in Riverdale. Puerto Ricans, Dominicans, it's Caribbean.
America.
Like the Bronx is a microcosm of America as a multiracial, multi-religious, multilingual democracy.
It's sort of where America is going to look like for the next 30 years, right?
It is the future. Yeah. And look, if you want to know what the future will look like, go to the Bronx, because the Bronx historically has been a refuge for new arrivals, for immigrants.
Let's talk about the fact that luckily, I caught you before you left because you guys went home early.
We did. I wonder why.
Congress recess.
Yeah.
The Epstein story. Yeah. It has consumed Washington, and you've been here long enough. So have I. We go through these summer feeding frenzies. This one feels a bit different.
Yes.
Why?
So look, Donald Trump's presidency is an endless stream of scandals and crises, and the media, we all tend to be desensitized to it because there are so many. He floods the zone with scandal. Yeah. But this is different because it's a crisis within MAGA itself. Like MAGA is like a religion. and it has an almost religious devotion to the Jeffrey Epstein conspiracy, and a religious devotion to Donald Trump himself. He is the chosen one, right? He was chosen to release the Epstein files as though it were a form of revelation and destroy the deep state, and he's the one and only person who can reveal the truth. And the fact that he refuses to release the files, right, is creating an identity crisis within MAGA, and it has MAGA wondering whether Donald Trump himself is part of the cover-up and corruption of the so-called deep state.
It appears House Democrats see a political opportunity. How would you describe it?
It's a clear political opportunity because the slogan of the Trump administration is promises made, promises kept. He made a promise to release the Epstein files, and so far he has broken his promise, not only to the American people, but specifically to his own base.
Funny you bring up promises. That's been sort of the public is used to politicians breaking promises all the time, right? And yet there's always a promise that matters more to voters than others. Read my lips, no new taxes. If you like your plan, you get to keep it. Is this one of those type of promises, it appears, for this constituency?
Look, I mean, not only did Donald Trump call for the release of the files, but 1 month before the 2024 presidential election in October, J.D. Vance said, release the files. Kash Patel, the FBI director, Dan Bongino, the FBI deputy director, said, release the files. I think during a Fox News interview, John Roberts asked Pam Bondi, is the Trump administration going to publish the Epstein client list? And she said she had it on her desk to review. So the Trump administration, before his presidency and during his presidency, have been signaling to the base that the client list is real and that there's a massive cover-up and that Donald Trump is the one and only person who's going to expose it. And now that lie is coming back to haunt them.
Are you wondering why Merrick Garland or Joe Biden's administration didn't release all this stuff?
Look, I mean, Biden probably should have released it, but he did not run on releasing it. Like, I think the issue here is the campaign promise. Like, Donald Trump, unlike Joe Biden, Donald Trump ran on a promise to release the Epstein files, and he's failing to keep that promise.
How many of these House Republicans, you're unlike many Democrats, you have a lot of good relationships across the aisle. What are they really, like, how concerning is it? In some ways, I know this is not a front and center issue of why they got elected, but how many of them are really nervous how their constituents are dealing with it?
I think the controversy around the Epstein files is causing such extreme discomfort that Mike Johnson would rather release members of Congress than release the files. He would rather shut down the operations of the House than confront the issue. But the fact is, there's no escaping the inescapable. Like, the issue shows no signs of disappearing, and it strikes at the conspiratorial core of the MAGA movement itself.
And you expect that when you come back in September, that this is among the first issues you guys have to deal with?
There are enough Republicans who are willing to vote for a bill that forces the release of these files. So stay tuned.
I want to pivot to the politics of New York City. I'm going to read you this quote from Dan Pfeiffer, former communications director for Barack Obama, one of the Pod Save America boys. And he tweeted the following. If a more moderate Democrat beats a progressive in the 2028 primary, as in 2016 and 2020, it will be tough to convince progressives to unite behind the nominee when the Democratic establishment won't rally behind Zohran Mamdani after his convincing primary win. Does he have a point?
I feel it's unfair because Zohran Mamdani is part of the Democratic Socialists of America, and the Democratic Socialists of America never coalesces around the Democratic nominee. It did not support Kamala Harris, quite the opposite. It accused Kamala Harris of supporting a quote-unquote genocide in Gaza. So I feel like there's a double standard here, right? Like, the Democratic Socialists never support the traditional Democratic nominee, but expect traditional Democrats.
So you draw a line between progressives and Democratic Socialists.
The distinction in New York is blurring, but historically there has been a difference, but in New York that difference is blurring. But look, I've been clear that unlike Republicans, like, Democrats accept the results of the election. Zohran Mamdani is the Democratic nominee. He is likely to be the next mayor of New York, just given the political reality. And I've said to him over the phone and in person that I am willing to build a working relationship with him. And if I disagree with him, I will hold his feet to the fire as I would any other mayor. But if I agree with him, I'm going to cooperate with him for the good of the city and the country, because ultimately the New York Congressional delegation is an advocate, a lobby for the interest of New York City, and he's going to be the chief executive of New York.
Okay, that's if he gets elected. You'll pledge to work with him. Are you going to support his candidacy?
I accept the results of the election, but I have no plans to endorse, and nor has he asked for an endorsement. So.
Are you? I'm sure people like Eric Adams and Andrew Cuomo have asked for your endorsement. What would it take?
Neither one of them has asked for my endorsement. So
that's interesting. Yeah. Or Mr. Waldman, he hasn't either.
No.
If they did, would you consider it?
Yeah, I'm going to remain on the sidelines because I'm a loyal Democrat, but I have real concerns about Mr. Mamdani's past. And look, within my community, there's extreme anxiety.
He did well in your district, though, in parts of it.
Cuomo won my district by more than 20 points.
Okay, so this is your district was a Cuomo district.
So he did well in most congressional districts, except Greg Meeks and mine.
Interesting.
Yeah, but it was an impressive performance citywide.
So, well, given that,
but I represent.
Why did Mamdani not do well in your district?
I think among voters earning less than $50,000 a year, Cuomo came in first place, and then among voters earning more than $100,000 a year, Mamdani came in first place, and I represent a largely working class district of working class people of color.
Was it law and order issues, or was it? I mean, because it's interesting. He ran on. He's getting credit for running on these cost of living issues. You have a district that's very sensitive to prices, yet that didn't resonate. I mean, I'm trying to understand that disconnect.
Look, I would be careful not to mistake a preference for Cuomo for opposition to Mamdani. Like the majority of my district is going to vote for Mamdani in the general election.
That Cuomo won't be able to make the same inroads.
It's so deeply Democratic and so loyally Democratic that I suspect it will overwhelmingly vote for Mamdani. I could be wrong, but that's my expectation. But the voters in what is referred to as the commie corridors of New York City, right, and the more gentrified neighborhoods of Brooklyn and Queens.
It is where the wealthier the voter, the more likely they wanted the socialist.
He won Wall Street.
They're the only ones that can afford socialism. That's the joke?
He won Wall Street, but those voters tend to be more ideological, like tend to be either DSA or DSA light, and therefore would gravitate toward Mamdani. The voters in the Bronx, particularly the working class voters of color, are more relational. So, just like familiarity breeds contempt, familiarity breeds comfort. And Cuomo is simply a more familiar brand. And so that's why he won those voters.
For the life of me, I don't understand why what I would call the New York City establishment just sort of stood there and watched Cuomo become the establishment candidate and assumed that he had repaired all his it seemed to, from the outside, this seemed to be a disaster in the making. And I didn't quite get why there wasn't more interest in getting you to run. And I know you felt pressure to run. Getting somebody that is not Mamdani, but not Cuomo.
I feel like there's a false narrative that there's a Democratic establishment out there pulling the string.
There's no string to pull?
No one chose Andrew Cuomo. Andrew Cuomo chose himself. And once he entered the race, there was no real room for an alternative to emerge because he has a deep reservoir of support among working class communities of color, particularly the black vote.
Would you have advised him to continue this candidacy, or would you have advised him to step aside?
If you saw him, I would advise against it. Yeah.
You don't think he should be continuing his candidacy?
I feel the opposition to Mamdani, more so Eric Adams than Andrew Cuomo, are just too fatally flawed to win.
If there was some sort of consolidation, is that candidate of interest to you?
I'm going to remain neutral.
No matter what.
Because my district's divided. Most of my constituents who are loyal Democrats are going to vote for Mamdani, but then I have a Jewish community in Riverdale that has real concerns about him. And I feel like he has to proactively address those concerns. And I would argue that those concerns are best addressed by keeping Jessica Tisch as the commissioner of the NYPD. Right. I mean, that would send a powerful message.
Has she been on the ballot for mayor? Is she a runaway victor?
Hard to know, but there was certainly a wide universe of voters who voted for neither Mamdani nor Cuomo, and those voters were left on the table.
Yeah.
So
And a candidacy like hers might have been.
There could have been a
animated.
hypothetical candidacy that could have captured those voters.
I want you to address another, because I'm curious. Do you think what's happening in New York City among Democrats is going to go national?
Yes and no. So ideologically, no, because and I want to be clear, Mamdani did make impressive gains among Muslim voters, among South Asian voters, but his core base primarily consists of white progressives and white democratic socialists, and those voters are overwhelmingly clustered in cities like New York. And so we have to be careful not to mistake New York City for the rest of the country. New York City's electoral demographics are quite different. So I'm not clear that the outcome of a New York City mayoral race has much to say to Marie Gluesenkamp-Perez about how to win an election in Washington State, or much to say about Jared Golden about how to win an election in Maine. Having said that, I do feel like the outcome represents what I call the Mamdani media revolution in American politics, and that will be national. For me, the mayor's race was not simply a contest between competing personalities and ideologies, but it was a collision between two worlds of media: the world of old media, the world of television, cable news, network news, and the world of new media, the world of vertical videos, Instagram Reels, TikTok, YouTube Shorts.
Well, I think about this. Andrew Cuomo was impossible to interview. They were playing almost like a hide the ball, like he was so perhaps worried about questions about his resignation, worried about all of that stuff, and it made him distant to the voter.
Whereas Mamdani was ubiquitous.
Everywhere.
He was ubiquitous.
Did you learn something from him watching
I
him?
did.
Yeah.
I think a few. One is, I think the most important lesson learned from the mayoral race is that Democrats have to adapt to the brave new world of alternative media, or we're in danger of becoming extinct, right? If you confine yourself to traditional television ads, you're going to be invisible to a new generation of voters who are largely operating on social media.
I mean, I've heard this where if you just think linear television is the way to talk to New York City, you're not going to talk to him.
I do not even have a television. I consume my news from YouTube, from social media. So Cuomo in his IE spent about $40 million on television ads. I did not see a single one.
Talk about a lesson learned.
I did not see a single one.
James Carville.
Whereas I saw Mamdani everywhere.
James Carville earlier this week wrote an op-ed that was basically, please let's not have the Civil War until after 2026. Like, he was predicting that there is some form of a fight that's going to happen between the left and the center, or however you want to describe the non-left wing of the Democratic Party. Do you foresee that, and do you think it can be postponed until essentially the Democratic presidential primary?
Look, I would prefer to postpone the Civil War because the focus should be on defeating Donald Trump, who to me represents a frontal assault on our democracy and our economy and our society. So I would love nothing more than to have 100% of our time and energy spent on resisting Trump, rather than become distracted by infighting.
Good luck with that.
So far,
reality is that
so far we're failing. But look,
do you expect, what Carville was saying though, is he expects a pretty rough, he called it a civilized civil war.
Yeah.
But that this is going to be, something akin to what we kind of saw between Sanders and Clinton, which was a civilized, respectful divide in the party.
Yeah. Well, look, there should be a contest of ideas in a presidential election, right? But the focus at the moment should be winning back the House and the Senate in 2026 and resisting the worst abuses of Donald Trump's presidency. And everything else should be secondary.
I know Columbia is not in your district, but it is a mainstay of New York City. Their decision to settle with the Trump administration, I'm familiar with academic institutions, and many of them want to move on, and I understand that. You're trying to just get focused so that you can go forward. What kind of precedent, though, has this set?
Look, it could set a dangerous precedent. And keep in mind that Donald Trump has a pattern of weaponizing the government against politically disfavored institutions, whether it's colleges and universities, law firms. And when you capitulate to an authoritarian
Don't
like
forget
Donald Trump,
corporations that own media companies.
corporations, Paramount, CBS,
Right.
you become complicit in the erosion of our democracy. So I have a nuanced view here because I actually have been sounding the alarm about a crisis of campus anti-Semitism.
That is real.
Like the sense
that is a real issue.
the sense of insecurity among many Jewish students
Right.
is real and runs deep and has to be addressed. But I feel like it should be possible to confront the crisis of campus anti-Semitism without delegitimizing and dismantling all of higher education.
Yeah.
And for me, for all its imperfections, higher education remains one of the jewels in the crown of American leadership in the world. And if we're defunding research and development in places like Columbia University, we're simply sabotaging ourselves to the benefit of our foreign adversaries.
I want to talk about the angst in the Jewish community.
Yeah.
I'm Jewish, and my own family has this angst, which is this discomfort of watching what's happening in Gaza.
Yeah.
At the same time, the feeling where many Jewish Americans feel homeless politically because there's been pieces of anti-Semitism left and right. So there's this sense of almost political isolation. But there's this feeling that it's become harder to criticize Netanyahu without somebody accusing that person of being anti-Semitic.
Yeah.
Right. And this is this, and there's angst in this in the Jewish community. There's angst outside it. I'm guessing you probably hear it yourself in your own district.
Look, I love America, but I do not love my government. And it is possible to support Israel as a country while objecting to the Israeli government.
And the idea that there should be a Jewish state and not necessarily
like,
being in favor of what Bibi's doing.
Every country, including Israel, is fair game for criticism. It is fair to be critical of a country's policies and practices and political personalities. That is fair game. There's nothing remotely anti-Semitic about constructive criticism of policy, right?
Mm-hmm.
But questioning Israel's right to exist,
Right.
Glorifying and justifying October 7th,
Yeah.
that to me is not criticism, that's extremism. And so I draw a clear distinction between criticism and extremism, and questioning the right of the world's only Jewish state to exist. That crosses the line into extremism.
You and I, a few years ago when we first met, were part of a unique conversation when we were talking about this growing divide in the Democratic Party and the role that Bibi Netanyahu played in creating that wedge inside the party with how he treated President Obama. And if you could give some advice, I mean, Bibi is losing support for Israel by his leadership in this country. It is, I do, but you sort of gave more, you gave a more eloquent explanation for this, but I feel as if he helped create this growing anti-Israel sentiment a bit in the Democratic Party, unbeknownst to him, perhaps.
Yeah. Look, I think if you're a Democrat, and if you're a Democrat of color, and if you're a black Democrat, you take immense pride in Barack Obama. I mean, he represents just one of the greatest achievements in politics. We take pride in his presidency. And to see a foreign leader visibly disrespect him in the manner that Bibi Netanyahu did, I feel did irreparable damage to the relationship with the Democratic Party. It should be possible to disagree, but when you inject yourself into partisan politics and put your thumb on the scale in favor of one political party, that sets a dangerous precedent. And I believe that the consequences of that geopolitical calculation continues to reverberate till this day. Because the U.S.-Israel relationship will only survive on the strength of bipartisanship. And if you politicize it, you're not a friend of the relationship, you're an enemy.
And let's make no bones about it. Bibi Netanyahu politicized it in this country, didn't he?
I think he made a terrible mistake. And I think there's a legitimate perception that the present Israeli government is just aligned with the Republican Party.
Right. That said, it looks like he doesn't have an unending rope from this administration. What he's doing in Syria clearly is making this administration uncomfortable.
It's there are, Donald Trump is a fascinating figure, right? Because he has a mix of isolationism and interventionism, and you see these competing impulses surface at various
Weirdly
points.
unpredictable at times.
He's unpredictable.
The whole madman theory in this case might have been effective with Iran.
The only predictable fact about Donald Trump is unpredictability, and it reveals itself. But we'll see how long that relationship lasts. Yeah.
If Netanyahu's government reached out to you and said, hey, how should we try to repair our relationship with the Democratic Party? What would you say?
It feels like the damage may be irreparable.
Take new leadership in Israel.
I mean, look, I have no real relationship with the government, and I'm one of the most pro-Israel Democrats.
Really? They don't reach out to you at all?
Or, when I've had conversations, the conversations are had at such a high level of generality, I feel like I'm not eliciting useful information about what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
So I do not consider myself having a good relationship with the Israeli government.
What is your level of, what should the U.S. government be doing anything differently when it comes to Gaza right now?
I think there's a real need to end the war, secure the release of the hostages, bring humanitarian assistance to Palestinians in distress. I mean, you have a journalist like Haviv Redekor, who is a Zionist and an Israeli to his core, acknowledge that Gaza is approaching what he describes as catastrophic levels of hunger. And so when you have that kind of warning from Haviv Redekor, that has to be taken seriously. So I feel like we have to end the war, secure the release of the hostages, facilitate a new form of Palestinian self-governance in Gaza, and build on the momentum of the Abraham Accords. Like the Abraham Accords, to me, should be the future of the Middle East. Israeli-Arab peace, Israeli-Palestinian peace.
It's one of these frustrating things. It short-term looks so uncomfortable right now. But medium-term stability in the Middle East feels like it's close. Like it feels oddly, you have sort of some potential stability in Syria, the Gulf states. Iran feels as if it was a paper tiger, right? So it feels like we're so close to opportunity here.
Yeah.
Could Israel be too aggressive here and blow it?
It's a paradox because Israel has emerged both weaker and stronger. It's weaker in the sense that it does feel like
it's globally weaker, right?
And it feels like
support.
Support for the U.S.-Israel relationship is eroding,
right?
And anyone who denies it is ignoring the numbers. But at the same time, Israel has degraded Hamas, Hezbollah, the Islamic Republic of Iran. Like it was once surrounded by proxies who posed a real threat to its security, and now all of those proxies, including the Islamic Republic, has become a shell of its former self. So in that sense, Israel has emerged from October 7th stronger and has reestablished deterrence.
Let me get you out of here on the following, which is why Congress doesn't want to be its full, powerful self. Article 1 in the Constitution is what it is. And instead, and this has been, I'd argue about a long-term trend. This is not
the imperial presidency.
Well, we've turned it into a parliamentary system where if there's a Democratic president and a Democratic House, everybody's got a vote party line. If there's a Republican president and a Republican House, is it just that, do your fellow members of Congress not understand the three branches of government and the fact that they're actually supposed to be equal?
Look, the founders envisioned a system of congressional primacy. Like
100%.
We're not Article 1 by accident, but by design. Right? We're supposed to be the most important branch of government, and instead, we've often become the least important. The judiciary has become far more powerful than the founders had envisioned, and the presidency has become far more powerful than the founders had envisioned. And the founders thought that each branch of government would jealously guard its prerogatives, and instead, we're ceding authority to the White House. Think about the abuses. I would argue the abuses of the Trump presidency are as much a product of congressional capitulation as it is of Donald Trump himself. Right? Think about
They've given him a permission slip.
Well, the Alien Enemies Act enables him to deport people effectively without due process. You have the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, which enables him to set tariffs, which are effectively taxes without...
Although it certainly appears that the courts may eventually say, no, he doesn't have this authority.
But there are few voices there are few voices on the Republican... In fact, there are no voices on the Republican side who are complaining that he is waging an assault on congressional power. Like, the Republicans in Congress view everything in terms of Democrat versus Republican rather than the executive versus the legislature. And we need a generation of members of Congress who are going to be protective of congressional power.
Will the Speaker Jeffries be that kind of speaker?
Well, I think Speaker Jeffries is going to be far more protective of the institution than the debacle that we have now. So I have full confidence in Speaker Jeffries, and he's a true statesman. He's one of the most impressively self-disciplined people I know, one of the wisest people I know.
There's some Democrats that want him to speak out more, that wish he were more the face instead of Chuck Schumer.
I think he is. I think he's emerging as the face, and
because if he's speaker, he will be.
He will be the face. Yeah. He represents the next generation. I think the future of the Democratic Party has a name, and his name is Hakeem Jeffries. And anyone who underestimates him does so at its own peril.
Well, there are a lot of people in New York who think you're also part of that future. Any regrets about not running for governor? There's still time.
No, it was not my time, and I have the best job in the world. You know, when you're a House member, you get to be local, state, national, and international at the same time. You know, one moment you're receiving.
Sure, look at us. We're talking New York City and Israel, all over the map.
You know, one moment I'm receiving a complaint about a pothole on Fordham Road or an open-air drug market in the hub of the South Bronx, and the next moment I'm receiving a CIA briefing about tensions in the Taiwan Strait. And, you know, where else could you experience that kind of variety?
You're not getting any briefings as governor on the Taiwan Strait.
No.
Yeah.
And one of my colleagues described Congress as the best university in the world, and he's exactly right. Like, it's just I'm like.
Well, many of us believe you should graduate.
Well, yeah, I'm going to a better college. It's called the United States Congress. So.
Richie Torres.
Good to see you.
Great to see you. Well, joining me now is a longtime friend and colleague, Dasha Burns. You are now the White House bureau chief and host of The Conversation.
Thank you so much for having me.
I feel like we're like meta here. We're both having these, fun little...
Is this a crossover episode?
The alternative ways to create Sunday conversations.
That's right, that's right.
Look, you are really plugged into this Trump White House. We've had moments before where you think, boy, they're on the ropes. How are they handling this moment? But usually the president does his Jedi mind trick on his MAGA followers. They turn the page and they move on. The Jedi mind trick is not working on the Epstein story.
No.
Why is that?
I have never seen, and I've had multiple sources, White House allies, tell me they've never seen the White House this paralyzed on anything. And this unbreakable bond. I mean, we've talked about this so many times. The way that Trump and his base relate, that bond it's been unbreakable. And to see it have these serious cracks that he can't seem to repair no matter what he does is so...
They built
shocking.
This, though.
Yes.
Like, they rode the conspiracy. I always said this, that there was two parts to the MAGA myths. Half of it he created with his populism, and it was real. But there's always been this conspiratorial base that was always out there.
Yeah.
And he kind of acquired it, right? At first it was QAnon, but it's sort of, at this point, and the Epstein conspiracy has always been QAnon adjacent.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, this is all sort of blown
and
up out of that.
He didn't ask for it, but when it came, he was like, "Oh, this works."
Right.
Sure.
It was, and it's funny about Epstein. Like, his son would be more aggressive about it. Like, every day now the Bulwark or the Never Trumper Republicans constantly like to bring back J.D. Vance and Donald Trump Jr. Quotes about Epstein.
Yep.
There's never President Trump Epstein quotes voluntarily, are there?
But it is a creation of, I think that's one of the reasons why they've had a hard time quelling it, because it is their like they are Dr. Frankenstein, and it is their monster, and they also have to take care of the monster. They can't make the monster too mad. You don't want to kill the monster because it's yours. And so they've tried. I was in the briefing room this week when they brought special guest director of national intelligence Tulsi Gabbard to talk about the 2016 election. I mean, they brought out storyline after storyline to
None of
change
it's
the
sticking,
narrative,
is it?
and none of it is sticking. And the president is pissed off. Everything that I'm hearing from inside that White House and people close, he feels like he's been making trade deals. He's gotten whatever you think of the big beautiful bill and the rescissions package. It was a huge heavy lift to get those through Congress, and he's turning on the TV, and instead of people talking about all he's done in 6 months, it's Epstein, and he's furious.
Well, look, it is, and in fact, my lead earlier this week on my podcast was the fact that this has been as consequential of a 6 month as any president has had, particularly a second-term president. And the voters don't like it. Like, they already are having that issue.
Yeah.
This is before Epstein, right? The bill's not popular. The economy is a little unsteady. You've got concerns about cost of living. All these sort of 6 month.
There was the early
has
sort of
been-
MAGA meltdown over Iran and
Right.
then Ukraine. Like, he's taken steps that the base doesn't necessarily love, and then you have the straw that broke the camel's back with Epstein.
So, to me, they're on this. It's almost like they're on a cliff here, and if they're not careful, second-term presidencies, the minute they become lame duck, you can't bring it back.
It can slip through your fingers.
Right, and all of a sudden
yeah.
it's done. And right now he's demanding that the Senate stay in session to get it. And does Epstein open the door for more Republicans on Capitol Hill to feel comfortable opposing the president?
We've seen many rebellions.
Mm-hmm.
This is the kind of rebellion that feels like it has more teeth, and it's a crack. And once you see the crack, if you don't patch that thing up quickly, the foundation falls apart.
Is there any self-awareness among the president and his team that this is a reap what you sow moment?
I don't know that there's awareness that this is a reap what you sow, but there's an awareness that this is a more serious vulnerability than they thought. Like, at the start of this, the idea was this is an online thing, this is an internet bubble, nothing to worry about, it's going to go away. And then it didn't go away, and then it didn't go away, and then the bubble got bigger and bigger and bigger, and it burst out from the internet into these actual communities on the ground, and nobody at the White House had really anticipated that. They thought...
Okay, I just had a flashback.
Yeah.
Everything you just laid out, in 2010 and in 2011,
Yeah.
this was the conversation we would have been having about Barack Obama and the infamous birth certificate. And it was a story that they thought, this is an online story. The real world doesn't care about it. And it just kept festering, and it kept festering. And eventually, and it was ironically Donald Trump, right, who was pushing it. And this is essentially how he became the sort of the chief savior of the conspiratorial right, if you will. And at some point, the White House finally realized, we've got to deal with this head on.
But they realized too late.
Right. And, well, no, then they got bin Laden and they were able to turn the page. But it
took that. Yeah.
It took bin Laden, arguably,
Yeah.
to turn the page for them. They had released, they dealt with it, but finally it was bin Laden to turn the page. I don't know what turns the page for them. Something will, because these things
I mean, they've been
inevitably-
trying. They've been trying with any number of stories.
It's almost like they need an outside force at this point.
Yeah, no, I think they do, because what they're doing now, their hand was sort of forced to do something. Trump was pretty committed to not touching this at all. Like, for weeks he was saying, absolutely no special prosecutor, we're done with this. He called his supporters weaklings, basically saying, shut up and move on.
Right.
Then he realized that wasn't going to happen, so that now they're doing the grand jury thing. He says, Bondi, if you run into anything that's credible, like, put it out there. I think that's kind of making it worse, because now you have this weird drip that just extends the cycle. But yeah, I think something's going to have to come in and save them, because I don't see a way out for them right now.
Do they now see the downside of being closer to the Justice Department? Right? When you create a firewall, you can be you can play dumb. But because they have insisted on being so involved with so many decisions, everybody knows this is his decision.
Yeah, I mean, for better or for worse, I've had every legal expert that I've talked to has said this is a remarkable change for the DOJ under Trump. Like, he has completely changed that relationship. Now, there are people that have said to me, it's great, because now, they're not looking over their shoulder, like, nervous about investigations all the time. But yeah, it can come to bite you.
At the same time, before Epstein before they sort of lost control of the narrative, they were having to actually prepare for what the midterms, he essentially very much micromanaging the midterms.
Yeah.
With demanding the
He's not on the ballot, but he wants people to feel like
demanding the redistricting and trying, sort of aware that even losing control of the House by a seat will be considered the end of his presidency. They want to exploit Democratic divisions, but this seems to be getting in the way of it.
Yeah, they are getting, this has infiltrated and made insecure, I think, a lot of
insecurity. That's an interesting
insecurity. I mean, again, because this put them on the back foot. This took them by surprise, and this is a first for them. They've never been taken by surprise, certainly not by their base. And usually, when they're on the back foot and when it's Democrats, trying to cause a scandal, Trump can say, "Hey, they hate me. This is a witch hunt," and he's figured out an easy solve for when it's the opposition. It's just different now.
I want to pivot to foreign policy, specifically Israel.
Yeah.
Because there has been some reporting this week, and I'm curious what your sources are telling you, that the president is not happy with Bibi.
Yep.
Not happy with how he's managed Syria, not happy that he seems to be a big trigger happy now. Never mind that what's happening in Gaza feels catastrophic. This humanitarian crisis is only growing. And you can feel it. Left and right are starting to be uncomfortable with what Israel is doing.
Yeah.
There's some bipartisan concerns here. It's part of my conversation with Richie Torres, who's a staunch defender of Israel here. If you're Bibi Netanyahu, how nervous are you that Trump may start playing a heavier hand on what you can and can't do?
I do think any world leader right now is nervous about Trump because he has played this madman card, right? Which makes everything uncertain. You don't know how he's going to react. He's going to maybe say yes, okay, great, and string you along until he doesn't. I do know the president is frustrated because going back to Iran, he didn't want the conflict to escalate as much as it did when it did. He wanted Bibi to take a beat, take a minute. Bibi didn't want to do that, and that forced Trump's hand to act sooner than he wanted to. So he's up to here.
Because as much as he likes to call the shots, Bibi's kind of been calling the shots.
He's been forcing Trump's hand.
Yeah.
And we know he doesn't like that. And he doesn't like that. Plus, he's pissed at Putin. So these relationships aren't going how he wants them to, and he doesn't feel in control and in the driver's seat in the way that he was hoping. And so that could lead to some big decisions.
One final thing. This White House and this president has always been very sensitive to his health.
Yeah.
And the perception of his health.
Yeah.
So I'm a professional cynic at this point sometimes and skeptic when it comes to Washington, right?
Chuck Todd, cynical.
And so the fact that they released some concerning health information about him, part of me wants to say, what are they not telling us? The fact that they're willing to put this out, are there, you're there a lot.
Yeah.
Do you see it? Do you see a difference in him?
I don't, to be honest. I mean, for all the faults and criticisms you can levy against this president, his access to the media, his stamina.
You still see it.
I still see it. My cynical brain went to they're releasing this again to distract from
that
Epstein.
They even went here.
Yes,
that
yes.
health thing. Hey, let's see if people feel sorry for him. That he's struggling to walk.
No, exactly. That's where my mind went. I think health wise until I've not seen a difference. He's still ready to talk for many hours on end.
So we can find you at the Conversation every week.
Can.
Tell me about the Conversation.
The Conversation, I mean, we're both in this new world of trying to break the norms and the stilted format of traditional broadcast news.
Well, as I say, it's sort of like what happened with baseball and some analytics, the sort of the traditional Sunday show, everybody perfected that format, and it's hard to, your guests know how to sort of navigate.
Right. What if it's not the same performance every week? What if it's actually something kind of real?
So it's fun to break the mold.
Yeah, it really is.
Well,
it really is.
It's been. I've enjoyed watching you.
All right, back at you, my friend.
Congrats.
Thank you for having me.
You got it, Josh.